Before we get into this, quick note. Everything in this video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. This is aimed at generally healthy adults already familiar with fasting. If you have any medical condition, take medication, or have any concerns, please speak with your doctor first. Right now, inside every single one of your cells, there is a biological reset button. It's real, it's documented, and it earned the 2016 Nobel Prize in Medicine. It's called autophagy, your body's built-in cellular cleanup system. It dismantles damaged proteins, clears out broken mitochondria, and recycles the debris into usable fuel and new cellular building blocks. But here's the problem. Standard fasting advice treats autophagy like an on/off switch. Fast long enough, and it turns on. Stop fasting, and it turns off. Simple. Except the science tells a more interesting story. Autophagy isn't triggered by just one signal. It responds to multiple independent biological pathways, and most people fasting right now are only ever activating one of them. If you've been fasting consistently and still feel sluggish, metabolically stuck, or like the results just aren't matching the effort you're putting in, this is very likely why. Today, I'm walking you through 7 steps that layer multiple evidence-backed autophagy signals on top of each other. Not hacks, not supplements, just a smarter way to work with your biology. This is called signal stacking. Let's get into it. Step 1. Metabolic priming, the day before. Here's something most fasting advice completely ignores. Your fast actually starts the day before you stop eating. Autophagy is fundamentally a response to scarcity. Your cells ramp up cellular recycling when they sense energy is low. But if your insulin is already elevated going into a fast, you're working against yourself before you've even started. Insulin is a well-documented suppressor of autophagy. It signals energy abundance, telling your cells there's plenty of food available, no need to start the cleanup process. So the fix is straightforward. Make the day before your fast low carb and high fat, under 50 grams of carbohydrates, olive oil, avocado, eggs, aged cheese. You're depleting your glycogen stores and lowering your insulin baseline before the fast even begins. Now, I want to be honest here, because the research on human autophagy timing is genuinely hard to pin down. We don't have a precise study measuring exactly how much this accelerates things. What we do know is that fat-adapted people shift into ketone production significantly faster than those coming off a high-carb diet. Lower insulin going in means fewer biological obstacles in the way. You're setting up a cleaner runway. Step 2. The Ghrelin rule. Reframe hunger. So now you're in your fast, and at some point, here it comes, that first hunger pang. Most people either white-knuckle through it or give in and eat. But both of those responses are missing what's actually happening in your body. That sensation is the hormone Ghrelin, and it is not your enemy. Ghrelin is the initiating signal for autophagy. It doesn't just make you hungry, it directly triggers the scarcity response, the cellular recycling process you've been building toward. So when that pang hits, don't reach for food. Just sit with it for 15 to 20 minutes. As Ghrelin peaks, your cells are reading that signal and ramping up the cleanup process. You are not suffering through hunger. You are actively driving autophagy. Reframe it. That pang isn't a problem. It's confirmation the protocol is working. Step 3. Stack movement on the Ghrelin peak. Here's where signals start stacking. During that Ghrelin window, move. Not a brutal workout, just 10 to 15 minutes of light movement. a walk, some gentle cycling, body weight exercises, something that activates a cellular pathway called AMPK, your body's built-in low-energy sensor. When AMPK activates, it switches on autophagy through a completely separate biological pathway from fasting. This is the key point. Exercise-induced autophagy and fasting-induced autophagy are independent systems. When you trigger both simultaneously, stacking a Ghrelin peak with AMPK activation, the combined response is greater than either one alone. 10 minutes of movement during a hunger pang is a fundamentally different biological event than 10 minutes of movement after a meal. The context is everything. Step 4. Heat shock. Activate your chaperone. Third independent pathway, heat. A 20-minute hot bath, sauna session, or sauna blanket activates heat shock proteins, sometimes called chaperone proteins, which guide the folding and recycling of cellular components, making sure the cleanup machinery runs efficiently. Fasting signals scarcity. Movement activates the energy sensor. Heat ensures the recycling system operates at full capacity. 3 pathways, all pointing the same direction. One important caution here. Some people practice dry fasting, abstaining from both food and water. If that's you, be very careful with heat. A sauna causes significant fluid loss through sweat, and combined with a dry fast, that creates a real risk of dehydration and heat stress. If you dry fast and want to use heat, schedule it at the very end of your fasting window, the final 20 to 30 minutes, so you can hydrate immediately after. For everyone else, drink water before and after. Heat is a powerful tool, but only when your body has the fluids it needs. Step 5. Managing neurological versus metabolic hunger. Here's something that trips a lot of people up, and once you understand it, fasting becomes genuinely easier. There are 2 completely different types of hunger, and they need 2 completely different responses. Metabolic hunger is ghrelin, a real biochemical signal driving autophagy. You ride that out. Neurological hunger is something else entirely. That's habit. Your brain noticing it's noon and expecting food because that's what you've always done at noon. It's a conditioned response, not a biological signal. The fix for neurological hunger? Non-caloric electrolytes or salt water. It satisfies the habit loop without triggering any insulin response and without blunting your ghrelin signal. Your metabolic hunger keeps driving autophagy. Your neurological hunger gets a placeholder that keeps you comfortable. Small distinction, massive practical difference. A quick note on salt, though, and this matters. Opt for a natural salt like Himalayan pink salt or a good quality sea salt. These retain their full mineral profile, trace minerals your body actually uses. Regular table salt is heavily processed, stripped of those minerals, and often contains additives like anti-caking agents that some research links to digestive and metabolic disruption. On top of that, the high sodium concentration without those balancing minerals, particularly potassium and magnesium, can contribute to elevated blood pressure over time. It's a small swap, but a meaningful one, especially during a fast when you're not getting minerals from food. Step 6. The autophagy amplifiers. A few things you can consume during your fast that actually support autophagy rather than interrupting it. Quick note before we get into this. If you are dry fasting, this entire step doesn't apply during your fasting window. These are all consumed with water or involve liquids. However, dry fasters can absolutely use these before starting their fast or after breaking it to get the benefits at either end. For everyone else, black coffee first. The polyphenols in coffee have been shown in research to stimulate autophagy pathways. 0 calories, minimal insulin response, and it layers another signal on top of everything you've already stacked. Green tea, specifically its compound EGCG, is one of the most studied natural autophagy inducers available. If you're going to have anything during your fast, these two are your best options. Now, olive oil. This one is backed by some genuinely interesting science, and it's worth spending a moment on the researchers involved. A peer-reviewed study published in the journal Oncotarget, led by Stefania Ragacci and colleagues at the University of Florence, demonstrated that oleuropein aglycone, the main polyphenol in extra virgin olive oil, triggers autophagy through the AMPK and mTOR pathway. Specifically, it activates AMPK, the same low-energy sensor we talked about in the exercise step, while simultaneously suppressing mTOR, the growth signal that blocks cellular repair. That's a meaningful dual mechanism. Separately, a peer-reviewed paper from researchers at the University of Florence, published in the International Journal of Molecular Sciences, confirmed that EVOO polyphenols, oleuropein and hydroxytyrosol specifically, activate autophagy synergistically in neurons, with researchers noting their potential against neurodegenerative conditions where autophagy dysfunction plays a central role. Dr. Walter Longo, Edna Jones Professor of Gerontology at the University of Southern California, director of the USC Longevity Institute, and one of the most cited researchers in the fasting and longevity field, has dedicated much of his career to what he calls the longevity diet. In his peer-reviewed research, including a landmark clinical trial published in Science Translational Medicine and a 2024 study published in Nature Communications, Longo's team showed that a fasting-mimicking diet, specifically formulated to be low in calories, low in protein and sugar, and high in unsaturated fats, produced measurable reductions in biological age, insulin resistance, and disease risk markers in human participants. The 2024 Nature Communications paper found that 3 cycles of the FMD were associated with a reduction of 2.5 years in median biological age. Crucially, the fat composition of the FMD, which olive oil fits closely, is central to why it works. High-fat, low-sugar foods signal cellular scarcity without the insulin spike that shuts down repair. That's the same principle behind using olive oil during or around a fast. The important caveat, and I want to be transparent here, most of this olive oil research is from cell studies and animal models. Human trials are limited. So olive oil during a fast remains a gray area rather than settled science. What we can say is that the biological mechanism is plausible and the supporting evidence is growing. 1 to 2 tablespoons is the general amount used in research contexts. When it comes to choosing the right oil, this matters more than most people realize. You might assume a darker, more golden green oil is higher quality, and while that can sometimes be true, color alone isn't a reliable guide. Some high polyphenol oils are naturally more golden, depending on the olive variety and region, and dark glass bottles, which all good extra virgin olive oil should come in, make color hard to judge anyway. The most reliable indicator is taste. A high polyphenol extra virgin olive oil should have a distinct peppery catch at the back of your throat, sometimes enough to make you cough slightly. That sensation is the direct taste of oleuropein and oleocanthal, the active compounds you're after. If the oil tastes smooth, mild, or buttery with no bite at all, it's likely been filtered or refined to the point where those compounds are largely gone. Beyond taste, look for a harvest date on the label. Fresher is better, ideally consumed within 12 to 18 months of harvest. Some premium producers now list total polyphenol content directly. Anything above 250 milligrams per kilogram is good, with the best oils reaching 500 or higher. And in terms of origin, Greek, Southern Italian, and early harvest Spanish oils tend to be among the highest in polyphenols. Varieties like Koroneiki, Corotina, and Picual are specifically known for their polyphenol density. Light olive oil, or anything labeled simply as refined olive oil, is not what you want here. Those have been processed specifically to remove the bitterness, which means they've removed the very compounds that make this worth using. Step 7. Breaking your fast strategically. This might be the most important step in the protocol, and it's the one almost everyone gets wrong. Breaking your fast with anything high in carbohydrates, a bowl of oatmeal, a piece of fruit, a smoothie, spikes insulin almost immediately. And when insulin spikes, the cellular cleanup signal gets suppressed. All that biological momentum you've spent hours building, it gets interrupted. The smarter approach is to break your fast with foods that are low in sugar and genuinely high in a compound called Spermidine. The best evidence sources, based on food composition data, are wheat germ, which has by far the highest concentration, aged hard cheeses like Parmesan, Gruyere, and aged cheddar, mushrooms, particularly shiitake, green peas, and natto, which is a fermented soybean product common in Japanese cuisine. It's worth noting that fermented foods in general, things like sauerkraut or kimchi, are often lumped into this category in wellness content, but the Spermidine data on those is actually quite modest. It's the soy in natto doing the work, not the fermentation itself. So if you're specifically targeting Spermidine, wheat germ, aged cheese, and mushrooms are your most reliable options. Spermidine is one of the most interesting compounds in longevity research right now. Dr. Frank Medeo, a molecular biologist at the University of Graz in Austria, has published extensively on Spermidine and autophagy. His research, primarily in yeast and mouse models, shows that Spermidine activates autophagy through a distinct pathway: inhibition of acetyltransferases, which is separate from both fasting and exercise. Essentially, it's yet another independent signal you can layer on. Now, I want to be honest about where the science currently stands. Most of Medeo's work is in animal models and epidemiological studies, not controlled human feeding trials. So the idea that eating these foods right after a fast specifically extends autophagy in humans is an informed conclusion from that research, not a directly proven clinical finding. What we can say is the mechanism is plausible, the research is promising, and avoiding a carb spike when breaking your fast is well supported regardless. The practical takeaway: ease out of your fast with low-sugar, nutrient-dense foods. Spermidine-rich options are a smart choice. Keep carbohydrates minimal in that first refeeding window. You've spent hours stacking biological signals. How you break the fast matters just as much as how you run it. Measurement: how to know it's working. How do you actually know if any of this is working? You can measure it if you want to, and there are 3 different ways to do it, at 3 very different price points. The first and cheapest option is urine ketone strips. These cost around $5 to $10 for a large pack and detect a type of ketone called acetoacetate in your urine. They're a perfectly reasonable starting point if you're new to fasting and just want a low-cost way to confirm your body has shifted into ketosis. The limitation is that they become less reliable over time. As your body becomes more fat-adapted, it gets more efficient at actually using ketones rather than excreting them. So the strip can show low or negative even when your blood ketone levels are meaningful. Hydration also affects the reading. So urine strips are a useful beginner tool, but not something to rely on long-term. The second option is a breath ketone meter. These measure acetone in your breath, which correlates reasonably well with blood ketones. They cost anywhere from $30 to $150, depending on the device. But unlike blood strips, there's no ongoing cost per test. You just breathe into it. Accuracy isn't quite as precise as blood testing, but for tracking trends over time, they're a solid middle ground option. The third and most accurate option is a blood glucose and ketone meter. This is what you need if you want to calculate the GKI, the glucose ketone index, which gives you the clearest picture of your overall metabolic state. You take your blood glucose reading, divide it by your blood ketone reading, and a number under 40 indicates a meaningful metabolic shift toward the conditions that research associates with active autophagy. The meter itself costs around $30 to $50, but the test strips are an ongoing cost. Budget around 50 pence to a pound per test, depending on brand. To be completely transparent, none of these devices directly measure autophagy. No consumer tool currently does that. What they measure is your ketone and glucose levels, which reflect how far your metabolism has shifted away from glucose dependence. That shift correlates with the conditions most likely to support autophagy, but it isn't a direct readout of cellular repair activity. Track your numbers over time, notice what moves them, and you'll start building a genuinely useful picture of how your own biology responds to this protocol. So there you are, 7 steps. 7 independent biological signals, all stacked in the same direction. Prime your insulin the day before, ride the Ghrelin wave, move during that peak, add heat carefully, know the difference between neurological and metabolic hunger, amplify with coffee and green tea, and ease out of your fast with spermidine-rich foods. None of this is magic, but it's a smarter approach than just skipping breakfast and hoping for the best. If this was useful, subscribe and drop a comment. Which step are you trying first? I'll see you in the next one.